Congratulations on your purchase of the adjuster, the diesel industry's first and foremost in-cab fuel controller for the Bosch P7100 pump. Now it's time to install it.
Hey guys, Casey here with Attitude Performance Products bringing you the adjuster. We're going to jump into this and see what it all comes with, instructions, details, hardware, and do a quick install for you to show you how easy it is. Alright, here comes the fun part, opening up the box to see the goods. When you open it, you'll see right on the top a big stop. Please take a minute to review instructions before turning control knob or installing. Installation is very easy, but there's some specific requirements we got to do. Here's the instructions. You got some awesome decals to put on your truck after you're done. And then just some details about the adjuster, what you're going to get with it. And this is the good part. The goods. Alright, now that we took a look at the products, we're going to jump into the install. Taking a look at the tools you'll need for the install, just really your basic tools. If you got an impact, it'll make your life a lot easier. If not, just your ratchet, traditional tools, everything will work fine that way. Now's a good time to take the instruction paper, run through that, grab your favorite beverage, turn some tunes on, review that, and then we'll jump into it. Alright guys, just to give you a quick recap of the install, we're going to do it on the cutaway pump. You're going to want to take the 4 bolts off the AFC housing, then take the boost line, disconnect it. It's a 1/2 inch wrench. Once you got that, pull the AFC housing off. And then before the adjuster, obviously this wouldn't be there, but just to give you an idea where this sits, we'll pull this off. Typically you'll have your fuel plate bolted down right here with the 2 bolts. And simply just all you're going to do with your fuel plate, remove the 2 bolts, pull your fuel plate out, get that out of the way. Make sure you got everything clean, no dirt getting in the pump or anything like that. And then from there, we're going to install the adjuster. Make sure you got the gasket on the bottom of the housing. You're going to place the adjuster on, get it lined up with the bolt holes. Simply here, I'll get into the AFC arm install there with it, but it's simple. We're just going to pull the 10mm bolt out, slide the arm out, pull the stock AFC arm out, throw the new adjuster AFC arm on it. And then once you got that back installed, the bolt back in place, torque down, simply you're just going to set the housing, AFC housing back on top of the adjuster. We're going to just bolt it right back down. Once you got that bolted back down, make sure you got the boost line back secure to the back of the AFC housing. And then one key point you're going to want to do before you tighten these, you can see how the AFC housing moves forward and backward, right? You're going to want to make sure it's slid all the way towards your radiator or to the front of the pump. That's going to ensure that you get full fuel, full power out of your PPO. Once you get those back secure, totally slid forward, bolted all the 4 bolts back down, and you're set to go. All right, we took a quick look at the install on the cutaway pump. Just to give you an idea of what's going on, once you get the cable attached to the adjuster housing, you got your in-cab controller. Simply once you go clockwise with it, you're going to see the profile move back away from the governor arm or your fuel arm. You'll see with that gives you a lot more rack travel, which is a lot more fuel. If you want to take that away, you want to lower EGTs, lower fuel, get a little better economy, you can drive that back towards the arm. That's going to restrict fuel and less smoke, run a lot cleaner. Whatever you want there. So again, just counterclockwise, less power, clockwise, full rack. Let it have it. All right, we jumped through the products. We did the quick install on the cutaway pump. Time to get into the engine bay and get this rolling. So hopefully you got your tunes going, you got your favorite beverage, and let's rock and roll. First thing you're going to want to do is remove the valve cover. Just a 3/4 inch wrench. You have access to your injector lines. And the next step, we're going to remove the intake manifold. 7/16 or 11 on here to remove the clamp for the rubber boot. And just a 10mm on the rest of them. Once you got all the bolts removed, just relocate your dipstick, being careful with it so you don't break it. Get it up out of your way. And then on your intake manifold, you're just going to take it, twist it, slide it outside of the boot, just like that. All right, next step, you're going to remove the nuts for your heater grid. And get these lines out of the way so you can remove your injector lines. Pull those out of the way. All right, now we're going to remove the injector line. Going to do it to your pump side, then you're going to do the same thing on your injector side, just loosen them all up. Once you get them all loose, you're just going to remove your injector line straight off. All right, we got all the injector lines on the pump side loosened. Now we're just working on the injector side. They're all loose except for number 6. We'll get that one, then we can get these out of the way. Once they're all loose, it should just come straight off, pretty simple and easy. All right, now we're ready to remove the AFC housing. You want to remove the boost line first. Just get that out of the way. All right, next step is to remove the 4 bolts bolting down the AFC housing. They're typically at 8mm, but I've got mine changed out to some Allen. This position right here on this front corner usually has the break-off screw. I've already got mine removed, but usually just taking a chisel and a hammer, give it a good pop, you can break that, then unthread the threads out and remove that one. Alright, once we got the 4 bolts removed from the AFC housing, we're just going to simply remove it. When we pull it out, you'll see the AFC arm. This is the stock one here. We're going to remove it and install the Attitude AFC arm. Alright, now that we got the AFC housing out, we're going to install the new Attitude AFC arm. Simply just take a 10mm socket, loosen that out. Take a flathead screwdriver and just pry it up underneath here. It won't go inside, there's a little lip there, just give it a little bit of a tug. You'll see that backs it off, then just take it inside here and wedge it out. Once you have that out, just remove the pin. Pull the stock arm out. Install the new arm. Make sure it's facing the same way as the stock one was. Slide your pin back in. And just lock it back in, make sure the O-ring sets back in, and then just lock your bolt back in, tighten it down. And I like to just adjust it right where it was from the factory setting. Once you got it there, make sure everything looks right. Just tighten it back up and you're set. All right, now that we've got the AFC housing out, we're going to remove the stock fuel plate. Just look at it here, just a flathead screwdriver. Make sure you don't lose the bolt or any of the washers down inside the pump, so be super careful when you're pulling these out, just one at a time, slow and easy. Once you get the 2 bolts out that holds it in, just pull it out, and that's your stock fuel plate. Remove it and we'll install the adjuster. All right, one thing I want to mention before you install the adjuster on your pump, just double check and make sure your fuel shutoff solenoid bracket will fit in this groove. There's two styles of brackets. The original bracket, the thinner one, will slide in with no problem. There's some trucks, it seems like the 215 pumps, the little bit newer 97, 98 P-pump 12 valves, the brackets are a little bit thicker and they won't slide in, so you have to do a little bit of grinding on them and just ensure that they'll slide in before you install this on there and have to fight it, afterwards. So just double check that before you install this on the pump and you'll be good to go. Now that the stock fuel plate is out, we're going to install the adjuster. Make sure you got the seal, the O-ring in place, locked in the grooves. Make sure it's nice and tight in there. There's no way that it can fall out as you're installing it. If you lose that seal, then you'll have an oil leak that won't be good. So make sure that's in nice and tight. And then from there, we're just going to install it and set it right on top and line up the bolt holes. Pretty much as easy as that. And then from there, we're just going to install the AFC housing on top of that. And then with the supplied bolts in the kit, we'll lock down the 4 bolts on it. And again, we'll just want to make sure the AFC housing slid all the way forward when we do that. All right, now that we got the adjuster installed on the pump, we've ensured that the seal there is all good. Do the same on the AFC housing. Make sure the seal's all intact in place. There's no tears or rips, nothing that could cause a leak here. And simply we're just going to slide it inside the slot next to the profile of the adjuster. Once you slide in, just line up your bolt holes and then use the supplied bolts in the hardware kit that comes with the adjuster and line up the holes and bolt it down. All right, now that we got the 4 AFC housing bolts installed, we got the fuel shutoff solenoid bracket in place, everything looks good there. Again, like we mentioned on the cutaway pump, you want to ensure that the AFC housing is slid all the way forward towards the radiator. You got the fuel hard line that runs right across the front here. Because of the adjuster 3/4 of an inch lift there, it puts that 10mm bolt right into it. And so just take a flathead screwdriver and massage it forward just a little bit. Don't get too crazy with it, just soft massaging with it, get it forward. Just ensure that you can slide your AFC housing all the way forward towards the radiator, and then torque your 4 bolts down and you're locked down, ready to go. All right, once we got the 4 bolts locked down on the AFC housing, just remember to install your boost line back on. Tighten it back down with a 1/2" wrench. And then we can move on to installing the cable, running it inside the cab. We'll hurry and drill the hole in the firewire. All right, with the 11/16 drill bit, you can kind of see the placement here from the throttle where you want to drill your hole. So just place it there. It's also in the instruction notes with a picture that you can take a look at, but about right here is the right spot. So we're going to go ahead and drill a hole here. Goes through pretty easy. And from here you can see just kind of right at the top of the carpet layer, you can see the hole. Okay. Just try to keep the cable ran as smooth as you can around the fuel filter and just push it right inside, and about as easy as that. Hi, on the in-cab controller side of the cable, just do a little dab of grease. Then we're going to spline that onto the controller. Once you got that, just screw it in. I like to do this side first, that way it allows the cable, once you got it screwed in here, on the other spline side that connects into the adjuster housing, it won't allow the cable to slide in there. That way we can spline it into the adjuster with ease, and then we'll come back to the in-cab controller next and calibrate it. I just like the in-cab controller side of the cable, just put a dab of grease on the adjuster side. And then we're going to spline that in, double check, make sure the O-ring looks good here. And then from there you just got to spline it into the back of the adjuster. Once you get that in, you're going to place the Allen bolt in there and then just tighten it up and we'll be ready to calibrate it. All right, now that the adjuster is installed, the cable is installed on the back of the adjuster, we're going to go ahead and start reassembly of the injector lines, intake manifold. Just pretty much how we took everything off, we're going to put everything back on. Slide this on and then go ahead and just tighten them all on your injectors. Then we'll put the 2 10mm bolts down in, and once everything's locked up there, we'll move to the next step. All right, now that we got the injectors, the 2 intake manifold bolts that hold it down right here. You need those two 10mm bolts locked down. Make sure everything else is all tight again. I always leave one and number 3 just a little bit loose for priming, you know, as we go to start it back up and everything. Just double check it, make sure the lines bleed out, and then we'll tighten those later. But go ahead and take your intake manifold, set it back up inside, and then again do the same thing there. Just take your bolts, lock it down, torque them down, get your dipstick line back in place, and then we'll take the heater grid lines and put those back on. Once we get there, we'll be ready to calibrate. All right, now the intake manifold's all bolted down. Make sure everything's torqued, heater grid lines are all connected. Make sure those are tight. We're gonna throw the valve cover back on. And then once you get that on, tighten down the nuts for it, we'll move inside the cab. Just look over everything, make sure you got everything checked out, everything's tight. Again, we got 1 and 3 on the injector lines on the injector side loose, ready for a crank over. And overall, the engine bay side of the install is all complete, ready to move into the cab. And then one last thing I'd like to point out is the Attitude Performance Products oil filler cap. This guy here eliminates the stock ones. You got the plastic with the nib that always breaks off. They're a pain in the butt to get off and everything, and they leak. This billet aluminum one, it's got nice grippy ridges here. Allows you to get hold of it. Really nice and slick, and gives the engine bay a little more attitude. All right, now that the engine bay installation is all completed, moving into the cab, we want to calibrate the dial. Go ahead and take it all the way counterclockwise. Just take it until it stops. You know, once you get it there, don't try to over bind it or anything. Just go ahead and let it stop. From there, that's totally counterclockwise. At that position, the truck will not start. We call it the anti-theft mode. That means the profile is touching against the fuel arm, governor arm, and it's not going to allow any fuel for the truck. You're pretty much 0 cc's of fuel right there. So from there, to get to position 1 where we want to be able to start the truck and be your lowest setting, go ahead and dial it up 3 clicks. So you're going to go 1, 2, 3. At that position, the truck will still start. Everything's ready to go, but that's going to be your total grandpa mode, grocery getter, probably your best fuel economy mode, but you won't have very much power, less than stock. So from there, we want to take the cable off because you don't want your setting 1 down at setting 6. So we're going to take the cable off. Now just simply push it up to setting 1. That's going to be your setting 1 now. Reinstall the cable to the back of the in-cab controller. Make sure the spline works nice and smooth, and then just simply tighten the cable back on. Get it nice and tight. Nothing, you don't have to get it over tight, but just snug it up, and then from there you're at setting 1. The truck will start. And then again, if you want anti-theft mode, if you're somewhere you don't want somebody to be able to take your truck, steal your truck, whatever, just turn it back to 3 clicks. The truck won't start there again. So from there, go back up to setting 1. You can start the truck, and then for more power, more boost, more horsepower, just crank it clockwise all the way around. You should get a full revolution. That's going to be full rack, or as much as you can get until you put a rack cap on it, and you'll be set to go. And then the last but not least, wherever you want to install it on the dash, I preferably like to install mine over here to the left side of the steering wheel, just right here. Try to keep your cable at the less bind, the better. You don't want to get it in any binds. A lot of other people like to install it just over on this side. But again, just keep in mind the less the bind, the better for the cable. So I'm going to go ahead and install mine right here. All right, before we go dial up the adjuster, keep in mind we had number 1 and number 3 injector lines still loose. So I went ahead and cranked over the engine about 5 to 10 seconds until it acted like it was going to kick over. At that point, go ahead and come back out here, tighten 1 and 3 down. And then from there, we'll go ahead and jump back in the cab and crank it over, and it should fire up. Once the fire's over, just double check all your injector lines, make sure you got no leaks, everything looks good, and again, just do one more check over, and then from there, you can go dial it up and have fun. Thanks again. All right, now that we got the dial in-cab controller installed on the dash, just keep in mind counterclockwise is less power, clockwise, full rack, more power, more cc's of fuel. So go have fun dialing it up, and thanks again. All right, nice work on the adjuster install to give your diesel some more horsepower and attitude. Check us out at attitudeperformanceproducts.com. Now it's time to go and enjoy the 12 out with the adjuster installed and dial it up.